All right. Hey, folks. So I did a video yesterday on how to set up a routine when you're not training to failure. So I'll link that up there. And I went through that whole routine. It was a question from a viewer, and he wanted to know how he would change his training, how he would adjust his training if he wanted to move away from training to failure and explore some of those benefits. So what I didn't do, though, was I didn't actually explore why you might want to stay away from training to failure. And I think that's an interesting topic. So the video yesterday was sort of a practical hands-on guide. Today is discussing the reasons for why you might want to stray away from failure and work in a little bit more volume. So let's just do a quick recap of where we are. There are some situations where it might be beneficial to not constantly train to failure. There might be some benefit to trading a little bit of intensity for a little bit more volume. And I covered yesterday how you would go about setting that up. Today, I want to cover some situations and some benefits where that might be useful. So first one is, if you really want to hone in on form, on the target muscles and the execution of the exercise. Now, inherent in this style of training, sort of this is the reps in reserve type of training where you purposely keep 1 or 2 reps in reserve, staying away from failure. The focus is more on the execution of the exercise rather than focus on progression as to reach the end goal of training to failure. When I see a lot of guys train on Instagram, particularly the guys who are very interested in the whole progressive overload, train to failure style, you know the type, the low volume, progressive overload, top set, back offset kind of guys. A lot of their style and execution tends to go out of the window because they're just so hyper obsessed with the logbook. It's a rare sight when you get a guy who does the whole top set, back offset approach who actually lifts with good form. Most of them, I just throw it out there, most of them lift like crap. And they lift heavy, but their form tends to suffer relative to the weight that they want to use, because essentially that's all they've got going in the workout is just more weight, more weight, more weight. I think there's a premium to be placed on style and execution as well. So you'll know this because often a lot of those guys tend to not focus on a full range of motion because it's all about weight, weight, weight. They tend to not focus on a good controlled rep speed because it's just weight, weight, weight. I generally see like a lot of half repping with guys like that. They end up just cutting range of motion just to lift heavier because it's all about progression in their minds rather than style and execution alongside progression. So if you take away failure, okay, and you just implement more volume, you're letting the volume make up some of the stimulus. Therefore, you don't necessarily need to just dig in and go all the way. And that, I think, takes the focus away from progression and places it more onto style and execution. I'm not saying the two are mutually exclusive, but in general, this is what I see. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is the last few reps of any set when you're really taking it all the way, and you might be like shaking and losing control temporarily. And even at the point where you fail, if you fail, the bar is literally reversing back towards you. Those few reps can be injurious because by definition, you lose control at that stage. You are not capable of finishing the rep, so you literally lose control. That can be injurious. Usually it's not sort of big catastrophic injuries, but usually it's a lot more wear and tear on the joints, particularly like elbows and knees, stuff like that. So there's that. I tend to feel alongside focusing on form and just doing a bit more volume, more controlled reps, but still working hard, those tend to be a little bit less injurious. The third thing is those final sort of 1 to 2 reps, which are going to failure, they are disproportionately fatiguing, particularly if you're strong. Like if you're, anywhere between I don't know, up to a 2-plate bench or, 3-plate squat, up to a 5-plate deadlift or whatever, it's not going to affect you that much. But if you're a strong guy and you're taking a lot of sets to failure, it can be disproportionately fatiguing. So let's say let's split the difference. You've got, say, a set of 10 reps to failure versus, I don't know, 2 sets of 7, for argument's sake. You're doing 4 more reps with 2 sets, but they're a lot easier on the system. They're probably a lot easier to recover from as well, but you have more total work load, but you're still working reasonably hard in both examples. So failure reps, and particularly the ones closer to failure, it's sort of a sliding scale. They get disproportionately more fatiguing. Now, this is not necessarily a massive issue, and which goes back to my video yesterday. If you're doing a lower amount of volume, it's not really a problem because you're capped anyway. So again, those low volume, high intensity guys tend to do about close to 10 sets per body part per week, whereas the not trained to failure guys tend to do a bit more volume, more close to the 20 sets. So the last couple of reps are disproportionately more fatiguing. Now, it may be beneficial to replace that with just another set at that point, rather than risk going into those danger reps, which can be fatiguing, they can be neuromuscularly tiring, and they can just burn you out. Like if you have decided you want to do quite a lot more volume and that suits you, then yeah, it's not a strategy where you can just go to failure a lot. You will just ruin yourself and you'll have to take a deload every few weeks, whatever. Now, the fourth point is, it also accounts for exercises where you can't actually fail. So like if you're doing a barbell squat, if you've got a low volume routine, you've got a low volume, high intensity routine, and you've got squats and bench presses in there as your main lifts. Let's say you are training at home, you only train with the barbell. Well, what about the exercises you can't fail? You're in no man's land. You're not failing and you're still doing low volume. So where's the stimulus coming from? You know, so it kind of bridges that gap. I think this is one of the things that low volume advocates who train at home and want to do high intensity train to failure stuff, they inherently can't do that with squats and bench presses because, well, you'll die or get badly hurt. So what's the solution? You can't just glaze over that fact. You have to accept the fact, well, I'm not trained to failure because I'm training at home. If I did that with every set of squats, then what would I do? Fail, dump the bar, unload, reload. I mean, it's not practical, is it? But then people skip over that when they're putting together their routines. They go, oh, okay, I'll just do X number of sets. But what you should do is you should make up for that fact by doing more volume if you're a home gym lifter and you're not failing on squats because it's impractical to do so. So it bridges the gap. It acknowledges that. I would rather see somebody doing a little bit more volume, make up for that, than just not train to failure if that's their approach. And finally, equipment considerations. The barbell lifts, never mind the squat and the bench for a while, but the barbell lift, let's say overhead press and deadlifts, where it's close to fail. Training to failure on those lifts is brutal. You know, it's absolutely brutal. And I don't feel many people can do that. They say they can, but I'm not sure they can. And I think having a little more volume in there is probably a good idea because the barbell, you know, it's just equipment considerations. I think it's a little bit easier to train to failure on machines because you don't have that danger aspect. You can just go all the way. You don't have that survival instinct in the back of your brain thinking, if you fail here, something's really going to go wrong. You just can't do that with squats, benches, overhead presses, even to a certain extent, you know. So there's that. So yeah, these are all the reasons why you might want to target a little bit more volume. I'm not suggesting anyone does. This is just an informational video. I still believe everyone should train hard. I gave lots of caveats in my last video about how to set up training to failure and how the fact that training not to failure and the fact that you actually should train to failure for a brief period of time so you know what training to failure is before you attempt something like this. I think this is a relatively advanced thing, maybe. But I also feel it's a very useful strategy. And I think for hypertrophy and muscular stimulus, it's arguably better. So yeah, I mean, let me know if you guys want any more follow-ups on this, but it is something I've had a lot of experience with. Most of my bodybuilding career, so that's most of the last 3 or 4 years, I've not trained to failure. And you guys have seen that in my videos. I don't tend to do a massive amount of training to failure. I do like a lot of volume when I'm training. So I think it's, for me, it's probably superior for gains, as in muscular hypertrophy gains, simply because you're able to pack in more volume and without beating up your joints. But that might just be for me because I'm 40 and I need to protect my joints a little bit more. I don't want to be going to failure on the barbell lifts, you know, when doing 20 sets per workout. I want to just slim that down a little bit. But anyway, so there's some of the benefits. Again, not saying this is better or worse or whatever. Potentially it's better for hypertrophy for some people in some circumstances. But I just wanted to do a video to clarify yesterday's video to say, well, this is why you might want to do that approach rather than just how to do it. So hopefully that was useful. That was the intention. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.